All right, how you all doing? This is Professor Harvey. I'm out here in sunny California. I heard it in the back in Maryland. Uh, it was icy and the schools closed. But here in California, it is sunny. Uh, I'm out here for work at this amazing hotel. Oh, you can't really see it. Well, I don't know. I'll give you the tour later, um, so you can wish you were here. Although I don't know. The great thing about UMUC is I guess this class actually, from looking at the bios, most of us are in Maryland. But a lot of times, I know when I was in school, at least in the grad program, we had people from all over the world. It was amazing. All right, so what I wanted to do this morning here for y'all was to do a little bit of work on this Wireshark and just try to explain some of what you may be seeing here and how you might approach it. This lab is a little different, as was pointed out by several people. It is focused on one particular server. Let's take a look at what we have. So people have been talking about, like, well, how do you approach this? How do you approach Wireshark? How do you approach a given PCAP? And I'm going to show you some of the things I do in the beginning to look at it. Really, the first thing is in Wireshark, if you load up the capture file in Wireshark, if you go to statistics, you can look at conversations. And the conversations view will show you, come on, there we go. Conversations view is going to show you all the different individual conversations from different perspectives, right? One is from at the layer 2 at Ethernet perspective, at the layer 3 perspective, and the layer 4 perspective. So this is a helpful tool because you can kind of get a feel for the packet capture and what's in it from a high angle. So the thing about PCAP is, and these are actually pretty easy relatively because they are they're intended for a lab, right? So most of the traffic in here really is relevant. Of course, in real life, most of the traffic is not going to be relevant. It's going to be a whole bunch of junk you got to sort through. Here, that's not nearly as much the case. But even so, there's still just a lot. And getting through it, the first question is, okay, if you just go scrolling through the packets, there's just so much there. So I like to do this to get a feel for what's going on. So the first thing I notice here, so in the conversations view, you can see you've got 2 addresses, number of packets, number of bytes, and the number of bytes in each direction, as well as the duration. So when I think about conversations that are interesting, or conversations that are potentially might have something that in there that would be relevant to an investigation, things I'm looking for are going to be the top talkers, like, so I can sort by bytes, which is not always the same as packets, but often fairly close. So here we see bytes to packets. There's only 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different TCP, or I'm sorry, IP conversations taking place here. 3 of them involve this 5.199. It's got 3 different endpoints it's talking to, and then .69 is one of those, but it also then is talking to 2 others. The rest are just these really short conversations, right, that are probably just sort of junk. I mean, especially when you see .1 and .255, obviously this is going to be broadcast. This is often the address people will use for a router or default gateway. So most likely that's what this is, and this is just sort of junk that's not going to be of any real interest to us. And they're super short conversations anyway. So so those 2 hosts, .69 and .199, are going to be the most important hosts because A, they make up the one side or the other of all of the important conversations, and because by far the largest conversation is between the two of them. So just that right there tells me, okay, those two hosts, those are the ones we need to be looking for, .69 and .199. And what I would do is I generally will open up an empty text document and write down that kind of thing. All right, so I don't lose track of it. All right, so then let's look at the TCP view of the same thing. So obviously there's a ton more conversations because in TCP, a given conversation is delineated not just by the two IPs involved, but by the two IPs and specific ports involved. So each TCP session here is going to be a different conversation. So the first thing I notice when looking at this is, wow, well, first of all, there's a lot, right? So this goes on and on. There's quite a lot here, even though the number of endpoints is not that large. So the one thing I notice is that I see a lot of conversations that are super short, just one packet, and they are being initiated by, see, this isn't even one of those two machines, right? This is 5.1. So maybe these are going to have something interesting in them, right? 5.1 and 5.2 are both talking to .199, and then if you look at the ports involved, this is this higher port. So anytime you see traffic between two higher ports, okay, right? Really any ports above 1024, generally speaking. How was this sorted? Just lost my sort. Okay, there. Man, I lost my sort where I was seeing that. All right, anyway. So let's look at this again. 10, 10, 5, 199, 5, 5, 6, 11. One thing that's confusing in the TCP view, that's kind of annoying, honestly, that I wish they would change, is that each TCP conversation is going to be seen essentially twice here. It's going to be seen from the perspective of with the source port on one side, and then the other perspective with the other side of the conversation, the port on the other side. Every conversation gets reflected twice, which is kind of annoying. You almost wish they would have like source ports instead, because you really can't tell what the source ports are on things. For instance, if you sort the traffic like this by source port, you'll see that when you scroll down, then there's this huge amount of traffic that has this one port involved on one side, and it's talking to two different IP addresses, at least, on lots of different ports. That is, some of us were talking about port scanning in previous conversations, and there was port scanning in some of the previous PCAPs, but some of what people were identifying as port scanning was not. The key thing about port scanning is that the destination side, the port keeps changing. On the source side, the port may stay the same, or it may change. It could be either one of those two things. Because some scanning programs will change the port with each different packet in order to make the scanning less obvious. But you'll still see the same IP address initiating sessions to another IP address on different ports, right? Because it's checking each port. So let's look at this traffic from address A with this originating port. So what you can do with this is, once you find some traffic you're interested in, you right-click on it. You can apply this data as a filter, and we're saying, okay, it's the selected conversation. I'm interested in traffic from A to any And let's see what it gives us here. Okay, so it's going to show me anything where the IP address is .199 and one of the two TCP ports involved is 55.611. All right, and so sometimes when you're doing with TCP, because you've got IP and port both involved, it can be a little bit. Sometimes you have to adjust the query up here a little bit. But that query is going to show me all the traffic where .199 is one of the two IPs involved and 55.611 is one of the two ports involved. And I think that's going to give us what we're interested in here. So let's take a look. All right, so we see the traffic is actually originating with .199, right? Because it's just a SYN with nothing else. So we see it's talking to .1 and .2 here. And what we see is, okay, talking to .1 on port 139, sending a SYN packet. Talking to .1 on port 8888, a SYN packet. It's talking to .2 on port 139. From that one, it gets a reset, right? When it talks to 5.2 on port 8888, it gets a reset back. So it's getting replies from .2, it's just getting resets. So what that usually is indicative of is it's usually indicative of a machine that's not listening on that port. Whereas if you send to a firewall, it's usually being filtered. You're not getting anything at all. That's how this works. How the shunning of packets works, right? Most firewalls just drop packets, and but active sending resets is what a machine will do with nothing in between. By default, a machine, if you send a SYN to a closed port, it will send back a reset. So that's the behavior we're seeing here. Okay, now it's talking to yet another machine, and it's trying SYNs on the same port. And from that one, it's getting here it gets a SYNAC, so it's able to talk to that machine on 139. This machine is getting resets still on these other ports it's talking to. 587. Okay, so from 587 on .69 it gets a reset. Okay, so .1, it doesn't seem like it's getting any replies at all, which means .1 is, I don't see any replies from .1. So .1 is behind a firewall or something like that, or maybe it just, well, we should be getting ICMPs back if it's not able to route to it. So 1 is ignoring the packets. 2 is sending resets for all of them so far that we've seen. The first SYNAC we've seen is from .69. Port 139 is a common Windows port that's open and listening on pretty much any Windows host. So if you look at that, here's the SYNAC. And then it's interesting, so the response to that, so it says, so if you look at just the traffic to 139 to 69 on port 139, it sends a SYN. It gets a SYNAC back, and then it sends a reset. All right, so basically that looks like port scanning, right? Because it's trying to do a SYN to it, and when it gets a SYNAC back, it just sends a reset and it kills the session. More often, actually, what most scanners will do is just ignore it. Right? They'll get the SYNAC back and they'll just ignore it. They'll never send a reset or anything. It'll just, and that will just hold that synchronization open until it finally expires, and then the session. The thing about that is that sessions don't get logged. That was kind of one of the reasons why you would do SYN scans in the past, was that they didn't get logged, because only sessions that actually got established would be logged if you had a machine that was logging all of its TCP sessions. So you could actually sneak through a lot of logging back in the old days before it was more like network layer, and you could do port scanning without ever being detected that way, using that method anyway. All right, so this looks like port scanning to me, right? Because it's hitting multiple different machines. It's hitting all the same ports on those machines, but even when it gets a response, it's ignoring the response essentially, or it's sending a reset back. So there's the first SYN-ACK. Let's see if we see any others where we get any kind of SYN-ACK, like lots of resets. Here we go. Okay, so it went to port 80 on .69, and .69 came back with a SYN-ACK, and it sends a reset. Okay, so 199 is scanning. All right, so go back to our notes. Scanning .1, .2, and .69. Sorry. Problem with typing live on the screen is that everyone sees it. Let's see here. That's better. Yeah, maybe you can see my typos even closer up now. Okay, and it's over here and say it's scanning from port 55611. And it's interesting that that port stays constant for all of them. So, and that is typical Nmap behavior. So this looks like a scan, port scan, possibly an Nmap scan, but definitely a port scan. It's sort of randomizing the ports, but it's hitting the same ports for each machine in sequence. So it's definitely scanning just these 3 machines, unless there's other traffic we're not seeing in this capture. The thing about packet captures is you're capturing the packets at some place on the network. So you always have to be careful not to assume that you're seeing everything, right? You're seeing everything that the capture can see. That whatever tool is being used, whatever device is being used to capture packets, wherever it's sitting on the network, that's what you're seeing. And that's all that you're seeing. You're not seeing everything necessarily. It's dangerous to assume you're seeing everything. All right, so that's all this scanning behavior that's going on. It looks like that's what this 55611 traffic is. If we scroll down, we still see it's the same source and same .2.69. It looks like maybe it gave up on .1. Did it give up on .1? I guess it gave up on .1, which makes, oh no, there's .1. So it's hidden .1. .1, we're seeing the same thing, which is SYNs, but no responses at all. It's just dropping packets. Dropping everything. So .69 and .2 we're just seeing the same thing. It's getting resets back from .2, and it's getting resets back from .69. All right, so we see all this port scanning. If we go back to here, what we might then notice is, so here's what you can do as far as sorting goes. Let's look at 50. Okay, so here we have this is where the packets are originating from, and it's hitting all these different ports. The ones where we're seeing a total of 2 packets, 1 in each direction, right? So this is total packets in the conversation. This is packets from A to B, packets from B to A. So when we're seeing that, what are we seeing? We're seeing a SYN and a reset, right? Which is what's typical. We saw that when we looked at it in detail, that 2 and .69 were sending back resets for everything. So we should see a lot of that. When we see this, which is total of 3 packets, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing that in this case, it must have hit an open port, right? Because when it hit an open port, it was sending it was SYN in the one direction, SYN-ACK back, and then a reset back from the originating server that was initiating the session. So that would generate a total of 3 packets, right? 2 from A to B and just 1 from B back to A, which was the SYN-ACK. So if we sort that way, the great thing about the sorts here is that it retains the sort as you sort sequentially. So I'm going to sort by packets to show all the shortest conversations first. And then I'm going to sort again by originating port. And so now when we go back to 55.611, we'll see all the traffic to dot 1, because there it was just 1 packet because dot 1 was shunning all the traffic. And then we'll see all these closed ports, and then we'll see this short selection of dot 3s, and this essentially tells us what the results were of the Nmap scan. The Nmap scan results look like this. All the ones that say that have 3 packets. These are the ports that were open. On 69 we had 139, 80, 445, 135, 1025, 2381, and 2301. These 2 are unusual. These 2 here are pretty strange. You don't see that very often. I'm not sure what these ports are. So this traffic, it may be interesting to see what else goes to these ports. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take notes on what was open. Okay, so it's open on, I try to get them in order, right? So I'm going to reorder them to be not just in the sequence they are in. 445. 1025, 2381, 2301, 2381. So these ports are the interesting ones. I'm not sure what that traffic would be. And of course right now that's just scanning traffic to them, but we'll see if there's any other traffic to those ports. And then dot 2 is a new IP address we haven't taken any notes on yet, and it is only open on port 53, right? So it's a DNS server, and it may be nothing but a DNS server because it looks like that's the only thing it responded on. And 10.10.5.1, it looks like just shuns all packets. Or I'll just say it just drops everything, all packets. Okay. All right, so that's what we're getting here. Let's see. Okay, so let's see here then. Resets when it receives a SYN-ACK. All right. So last thing I'm going to do here in this capture, because I don't want to take make this particular thing too long, is try to see what any of this traffic is. So let's look at 2301. Oops. And it's still selected there. Okay, so 2301. All right, is there any other traffic to it? Let's see here. No, just scanning traffic. And 2381, just scanning traffic, and 1025. So even though it hit those, they weren't of interest. It didn't end up sending any more traffic to them. 1025, same deal, right? All it did was get this and see that it was open. So let's look at the others while we're at it and see what they actually talked on. 445, 139. Okay, so so 139. There's a fair amount of .139. I mean, .139 is a standard Windows port for Windows domain traffic. So we see some here, but this is the only. Okay, so .1 is talking on .139, Interesting, but there was no. Okay, so it's not from .19, it's from 69. So that may be interesting to look at. So 445. Okay, so there's a fair amount of that. Multiple different sessions there. '80 and 53. Okay, so let's look at 53. 53 is just going to be DNS traffic. But DNS traffic is really interesting to look at, and I'll show you later. That's actually one of the first things I tend to look at for most captures. But here, we don't see this a whole lot of DNS traffic there. We may have to look at it from the other way around. Okay, then let's look at 80, and I think we'll find that 80 is where there's a lot of traffic, right? So 80 is where the bulk of the traffic is going to be. As we can see here, lots and lots of sessions, lots and such of short sessions from 199 to 69. That's indicative of lots of web traffic. Some clients will do a keep alive and use the same port, the same source port over and over again when talking to a web server. But generally what it'll do is it'll open up new ports in order to grab things like images and other assets using lots of different ports. So when you see a web session between a client and server, you'll see lots and lots and lots of source ports here. So basically there's a lot of web traffic between 199 and 69. And when I scroll down through all the web traffic, I see there's no other endpoints involved in any of that. It looks like it's just those two. So that's kind of the bulk of what we're going to be seeing here. I mean, aside from all that scanning traffic, which obviously generates lots of really super short conversations. So if we look at long conversations, you can see everything from here all the way up is just 1 and 2 and 3, and so this is all this port scanning. The majority of the TCP sessions are not even full sessions, and they're just from scanning activity. And then the long sessions are all, most of these are port 80. And then there's a few sessions that are interesting. So anytime you see a session between two higher ports, like I was saying earlier, that's weird, because why are two higher ports talking to each other, right? Normally conversations are between a client and a server, and both would be using a registered port or a well-known port. So anytime you see an extended conversation between two machines on where both of them are using a higher number port, it's weird, and you definitely want to check into that. So let's check in on those later. So I'm going to suggest that we look at those later, but I'm going to cut this video off for now. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what we're looking at here in terms of what we look at when we look at it, what I'm looking for when I look at it at a PCAP. The other thing I notice is that these sessions here, in addition to being large, are very long, right? The duration is very long. So a long session between two higher ports makes me think maybe it's a RAT. It's some kind of RAT traffic. It's something that is, because those type of sessions tend to be very, very long, right? They establish as if you see like a keylogger running on your network, a lot of times it'll just be continuously streaming key data. Smarter keyloggers will buffer keylogging data on the victim and then send it up in large batches. That's smarter, because then you don't create these sort of obvious, really long and yet not that big conversations. This is both big and long. So the next video I do, I'll put together, we'll look at this traffic, and then we'll look at this traffic as well. It's 443, so we probably won't be able to really see a lot of it. But the interesting thing is that, look at these ports. These are registered ports which aren't usually used by a web browser. And the other interesting thing is that 69 is the one that seems like it's the web server, right? Because it's where all these port 80 sessions are to .69, but these 443 sessions are in reverse. So that's weird. and let's take a closer look at those and see what's going on. So there's definitely some weird things we're seeing here just in terms of the ports that are involved, the pattern of like .80 and then turning around and talking to .443, and these 443 conversations are really long, which again, so it may be command and control traffic or some other kind of weird thing that's going back to .69. But then again, I'm sorry, that's coming from .69 to .199. Remember, .199 was the machine that was scanning, which means that it seems like it's the attacker machine. So here we have this machine that had lots of sessions from the attacker. Now all of a sudden it's receiving traffic. It's initiating sessions to the machine that was the attacker on 443, which makes me think it got successfully taken control of at some point, and it's initiating sessions back, possibly. But we'll have to take a look at what those sessions look like. Hopefully we can see something even though it's on 443, but we'll find out then. I'm going to go ahead and close this one up because I don't like to make these videos real long, because I find that people don't tend to sit through long videos even when they are even if they'll stop the one video and start the next video, they don't want to sit through one really long video, so I'll kind of chop them up or into sort of logical pieces. So that's how we do the conversation view and how we do some quick analysis using, well, not super quick, but how we kind of break down the conversations in a PCAP.